Mary Shelley, born in 1797, was the only child of Mary Wollstonecraft, the famous feminist, and William Godwin, a philosopher and novelist. Mary's parents played a major role in shaping the romantic sensibility and the revolutionary ideas of the time, and from an early age she was surrounded by famous philosophers, writers, and poets. Frankenstein, or The Modern Prometheus, is a novel written by British author Mary Shelley about the eccentric scientist Victor Frankenstein, who creates a creature in a scientific experiment. Shelley started writing the story when she was 18, and the novel was published when she was 20. The first edition was published anonymously in London in 1818. Shelley's name appears on the second edition, published in France in 1823. Frankenstein is infused with elements of the Gothic novel and the Romantic movement, and is also considered to be one of the earliest examples of science fiction. It has had a considerable influence across literature and popular culture. The novel recounts the story of a brilliant scientist, Victor Frankenstein, who discovers the secret of giving life to inanimate matter and decides to create a living being from parts of dead bodies. The creature he generates has supernatural strength and a horrible appearance, thus inspiring fear and disgust in whoever sees it. Becoming more and more lonely and miserable, the monster turns into a destructive and homicidal being who is beyond his creator's control. Failing to convince Frankenstein to provide a female companion, he eventually kills his creator's brother, his friend, and his bride Elizabeth. Frankenstein follows him to the Arctic to destroy it, but dies in the pursuit. Frankenstein is structured as an epistolary novel. The narrator is an explorer who meets the scientist Frankenstein shortly before he dies. He is hunting the monster he has created, chasing it around the earth. Frankenstein tells the narrator his story tale, how he neglected his family and future wife Elizabeth to pursue his scientific research, and how once he had created the monster, it escaped his control. At a certain point in the book, the perspective shifts from the narrator to that of the monster. In this way, we gain an insight into the monster's mind. By doing this, Shelley shows us how an apparently innocent creature is corrupted by a hostile society to the point where he decides to take revenge. Frankenstein is much more sophisticated than an ordinary Gothic romance. It transforms a basic horror story into an inquiry on the nature of creation, scientific responsibility, and social justice. The novel is subtitled The Modern Prometheus, referring to the myth of Prometheus, who stole fire from the gods and gave it to mankind and was punished for his act, which made man equal in power to the gods.
If you're blue and you don't know where to go to, why don't you go where fashion sits? Different types who wear a day coat, pants with stripes, or cutaway coat, perfect fits.
Young Frankenstein is a 1974 American comedy film directed by Mel Brooks. The film is an affectionate parody of the classical horror film, in particular the various film adaptations of Mary Shelley's novel Frankenstein, produced by Universal in the 1930s. To reflect the atmosphere of the earlier films, Brooks shot the picture entirely in black and white, a rarity in the 1970s, and employed 1930s style opening credits and scene transitions. Dr. Frederick Frankenstein is a physician lecturer at an American medical school and engaged to the tightly wound actress Elizabeth. He becomes exasperated when anyone brings up the subject of his grandfather, the infamous mad scientist. To disassociate himself from his legacy, Frederick insists that his surname be pronounced Frankenstein. After the death of his great-grandfather, the Baron Buber von Frankenstein, Frederick travels to Europe to inspect the property. At the Transylvania train station, he is met by a hunchbacked, bugging-eyed servant named Igor, pronounced as Igor, and a lovely young personal assistant named Inga. Frederick becomes increasingly intrigued about his grandfather's work, especially after Inga assists him in discovering the secret entrance to his grandfather's laboratory. Upon reading his grandfather's private journals, Frederick is so transformed that he decides to resume his grandfather's experiments in reanimating the dead. Soon, Frederick is ready to reanimate his creature, who is elevated on a platform to the roof of the laboratory during a lightning storm. Eventually, electrical charges bring the creature to life. The creature makes its first halting steps, but frightened by Igor lighting a match, attacks Frederick and must be sedated. Upon being asked whose brain was obtained, Igor confesses that he supplied the abnormal brain. The routine ends disastrously. In order to avoid other chaos, Frankenstein transfers some of his stabilizing intellect to the creature who, as a result, is able to reason. The film ends happily, with Elizabeth married to the now erudite and sophisticated monster.
And others say, good night.
Good night.